Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with Alex King and Daniel Mangina. Today is Thursday, April the 2nd, 2020, 4 p.m. New York time. And wherever you are in the world, thanks for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And we're happy because we got a guest today. We don't get guests all the time, guys, but we got a guest today.
Yeah.
Rasheid Edwards, otherwise known as Coach Edwards. I think this is the first coach we've had who actually is called Coach. This is like another record. We got two records going on here today. Rasheid Coach Edwards is a mental health consultant and a hypnotherapist. There's the other first, with a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. Rasheid has over 13 years of experience in behavioral and success achievement strategies through speaking and coaching. He believes that the challenges plaguing the average individual is controlled by their perception and thinking related to their circumstances. Now, that sounds a little familiar to us. Rasheed's experience as a coach and hypnotherapist has taught him that we have unintentionally spent a lot of time programming our minds to work against us. And now it's time to program our minds for success. He's the author of the book, The Secret Commitment, and we're really glad to have him here. Rasheid, Coach, how you doing, guy? Glad to have you here.
Greetings. Thank you for having me.
Doing well. Love it. When I first got the email from you and I said, hypnotherapist, I had I've been doing this podcast for like 7.5 years and I had to think back and I'm pretty sure I have not yet interviewed a hypnotherapist. There may have been one like way back in the first year and I can't remember for sure, but let's put it this way. It's been a while. So my first question to you is, are we going to be hypnotized within the next 5 minutes or are we actually going to be able to complete the show?
No, that's
maybe we've already been hypnotized and that's why we're here. Are you feeling sleepy, Walt? Because I am.
No, I'm actually to preserve the integrity of my station. No, I don't want to engage in covert hypnosis.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Covert hypnosis.
As you could tell, we're a little bit loose here on LOA Today. We don't take ourselves too seriously, so hopefully
not
you're
once,
feeling
not
comfortable
never.
with that. But tell us more about how you got into this field. I mean, hypnotherapy is a field that certainly other people have gotten into, and it still retains a very strong corner in the overall coaching world. But it's not usually the first choice. How did you end up becoming a hypnotherapist?
Wow. Been doing it for about 15, 16 years so now. How did I get there? I'm kind of embarrassed to say how I actually arrived here.
Don't worry, there's no embarrassment factor here.
Nobody listening but us three.
No
and
shame,
600,
no
700
game.
other people, but we'll ignore them for the moment.
So in all actuality, years ago, I was on the internet in somebody's blog and they mentioned something about hypnotherapy. And I was taken aback by it. I don't know, for some reason, I guess I felt like my intelligence had been insulted when they mentioned this idea of hypnosis.
Damn.
So I decided I was going to use their words and their information against them. So I started researching. And long story short, I started to see the
benefits,
the substance, the benefit in hypnosis and actually how they related to how the mind works. And I ended up being converted.
Well, not only converted, you actually became an advocate.
Right.
You're out there preaching.
So you started out of pettiness.
Absolutely. If I got to tell the truth, I was very petty.
Oh. Hypnosis.
Right.
We'll see, my friend. Oh, we will see. Oh, we see? Oh, okay.
I was wrong.
Brilliant.
That's cool stuff. Tell us what some of those benefits are. I mean, since we're going to take a moment to laugh at the benefits, what are the benefits? Tell us about it.
The benefits are innumerable. So I'll put it to you like this. Literally, anything that you can think of that may pose a problem to you, there's a potential for it to be solved or worked out through hypnotherapy. Because essentially, we are, for lack of a better term, we are mind-based beings. So we experience the world through our mental phenomena. So when you talk about having issues or whatever they may be, it's going to be worked out through how you think about it.
That's true. And one of the things we talk about often on episode after episode is the subconscious programming that we built up over the years.
Mhm.
And that programming, until we can kind of get a handle on it, it can actually end up running our lives until we realize that we have control over it and we can start influencing it. And I would imagine that's probably where, one of the major broad areas that the hypnotherapy really can play a major role. I mean, you're basically giving yourself a way to reprogram your subconscious mind.
Right. I actually, that's basically where we work from. So we do certain things in hypnosis to gain direct access to the subconscious mind.
Mm-hmm.
So if you've ever watched someone being hypnotized, you'll see the hypnotist doing a lot of, perhaps, they may be doing things that you're not picking up on, or may look like, just being extra, but there's a certain way we go about gaining and maintaining rapport with our clients. So we have to do certain things to kind of get that connection, to get that trust, that rapport. And then once we've gained the rapport, we move on through this systematic induction. And once the induction is complete, we have, direct contact with the subconscious. We essentially we tie up the conscious mind, or we cause the conscious mind to kind of move out the way. And by virtue of doing that, we have access to the subconscious.
Interesting.
Daniel, were you saying something?
No, I was just going to say I can attest to the power of this. I was once very embarrassingly hypnotized on stage.
That
Oh dear.
I have tried many times to bribe and pay for footage that is still circulating, and periodically I'm sent clips. I still have a nickname. The entire networking community that I'm in that witnessed this experience still refer to me as. So I was getting cold sweats and flashbacks as you were explaining that, Rasheid, because it's true.
Wait, I need to know the nickname though.
My nickname is Usher.
Oh, now I gotta find this.
One of the things I was hypnotized into believing is that the man next to me smelt better every time the hypnotist rubbed his nose.
Oh no.
There was just this beautiful fragrance from the man next to me. It was really, really, and that wasn't even the worst of it. So I'm just gonna say, for the purpose of anybody listening, hypnosis is real.
Yeah, it's very real. I mean, the way I kind of explain it to people is hypnosis is the use of the trance state. So we spend about, unbeknownst to us, we spend about at least 80, 85% on the low end, 80 to 85% of our time in trance all day. And they're light trances, but if you think about it, as I'm talking to you, or things that I may have said may have caused you to kind of reflect in your mind and kind of look, like search for pictures or ideas that kind of connect with what I'm saying. And so as you're doing that, you're falling into like a light trance, because you're now causing other things to go on autopilot as you kind of indulge in that thought process. So what we do is we take that trance state and we expand it. So if I were to get a little nerdy right now, I would say, when we induce the trance state and we go into the state of hypnosis, we're shifting out of we're shifting from a beta mind brainwave frequency to a to a low alpha light theta, depending on how deep we go. And alpha is considered to be one of the brainwave frequencies that's kind of conducive to assimilating information. So once we kind of get there, if we transition a little deeper into theta, then we're even better suited for, the state of hypnosis. So that's kind of the scientific side to what the trance phenomena is like.
We should probably clarify too what beta, alpha, and theta are. Beta, as I understand it, that's the very high vibration. You're wired, you're alert, you're conscious, you're just right. Really part of it. Alpha is it's kind of like a step down from that, but it's not unconscious.
Like daydreaming, yeah.
It's daydreaming, yeah, that's good. Okay. And then the theta is a very, very relaxed state.
Yes.
So it's sort of bordering on sleep, but not really.
Right.
Okay. And the other thing I want to emphasize too, and I think most of our listeners already know this, but I'll mention it anyway. An ethical hypnotherapist. Boy, try saying that one 3 times fast. An ethical hypnotherapist doesn't put you up on stage and embarrass you in front of your friends. And an ethical hypnotherapist, first of all, doesn't try to get you to do anything that you're not wanting to do, right? I mean, that's a key portion of it. And also, as I understand it, and I have actually been through one session one time with somebody. You don't actually lose consciousness. You don't lose your will to somebody else in a properly run therapy session. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're correct. You don't. So you're always in control. Hypnosis and hypnotherapy, they are what we consider consent states. So we have to gain consent, and you're always going to be in control. You won't do anything in the state of hypnosis that you wouldn't do regularly. Now, as it relates to like stage hypnosis, it's not hypnotherapy. It's hypnosis for the sake of entertainment.
Yeah, it's embarrassment is what it really is.
It really was. It really was.
They are using real hypnotic inductions. It's just they're using hypnosis for the purposes of entertainment. And so typically the people who engage in stage hypnosis, they're not being made to do anything that they wouldn't do. They're going along with whatever the program is, and they're okay with it. So if you were told to do something, typically if you're told to do something and you're in a deep state of hypnosis, but if you're told to do something that goes against your values, your morals, or your ethics, typically you'll have some sort of reaction. And that's an indicator that this is outside of who you are. Aside from that, typically, like I said, though I kind of cringe when people connect me with stage hypnosis.
I can understand. I cringe too if I were you.
But that's all we know right now.
I do understand that that's how people relate to it. And I respect stage hypnosis because they're actually, fulfilling hypnosis, but just in an entertainment.
Right. Yeah, I can speak to the adverse reaction because you can actually see on the video footage, like, my face is like, all right. It was really, really, really weird. It's like a fugue state. But I mean, I'm working right now with someone who's an actual therapist, much like you, Rasheid, and we've been doing for the last few weeks, in fact, really digging in and doing that pre-work and getting the pre-work done. So I'm really looking forward to doing the intervention once the pre-work's done. So I've experienced the entertainment and
the therapy
and the deeper work inside of it. And actually, I've done the work for my level 1 hypnotherapy certification. I've just got to take the exam as well.
Oh, okay.
Good for you.
Look at you.
I didn't know you did that. That's fabulous stuff.
You learn something new every day. Now I have a question to follow up with what Rasheid was saying. Is the rumor true that there are certain people that are too smart for hypnosis?
So again, going back to my simplified concept of what hypnosis is, it's a consent state, and it's not necessarily someone is too smart, because hypnosis is not about outsmarting anyone.
Right.
Some people may not really, how would I say it? Some people are resistant to the process. Then there are some people who are very logical and just thought-based. And so they have to think about everything. So these are the types of people that you would do instant inductions with. So anyone can be hypnotized because anyone can go into a trance state. And again, just like driving, listening to the radio and talking on the phone or whatever the case is, and, you kind of lose yourself in the commute. And then when you get where you're going, you don't remember, how you got.
Yep.
We've all done that. Like I know it's a good thing I know how to drive because I have no idea how I got here.
Right? Gotta love autopilot.
Yeah. So that's a light trance in itself. So
Mm-hmm.
everyone can be hypnotized if they consent to it, if they're open to it.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone's not going to experience hypnosis the same. Some people will get into extreme depths of what we call somnambulism and even deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got all different types of states, Esdale states and so forth, that just go way, way out there.
Mm-hmm.
But typically, everyone is able to get into a basic hypnotic state, getting into that basic alpha/theta frequency.
Mm-hmm.
And then tell us a little bit about your book, The Secret Commitment. That's an interesting title all by itself. But what's it about specifically? I mean, give us a little taste of it.
So that book is a self-help book. Secret Commitment, honestly, if I'm being honest now, which I am,
well, I hope so.
How I kind of break.
Otherwise, we're going to have to dig in and do a little hypnotherapy on you. I mean, seriously.
But literally, I never tell anyone this. But
okay.
This is kind of like how I've taken the mysticism of the law of attraction and made it concrete. So I've broken it. I broke my book down into, well, first of all, it's self-help. It's The Secret Commitment, 7 Keys to Goal Achievement and Transformation. So what I have are 7 steps that I use. The first 3 or 4, I call them the developmental keys. And these kind of lay the foundation. It's setting your vision, your intent, all that good stuff. And then the second part of the book is what I call the momentum keys. And this is where the actual action comes in. So like I said, it's how I understood the law of attraction and how I made it a little less mystical and made it a little more practical and concrete.
Mm-hmm.
That's good. It's a good goal to do that because everybody who is in this broad LOA circle tries in one way or another to accomplish that. So every time that somebody like you comes along and does find a way to make it more concrete, more real, more part of the mainstream, the more acceptable it becomes. So well done to you for doing that.
Thank you.
Also, in the little write-up that you gave me about yourself that gave me some more information about what you're doing, what you've been up to, you mentioned that you've been working with people during the pandemic, particularly helping people who are suffering from anxiety, stress, and so forth. And I wonder if you could address that for a moment, because my take, and I think all of our take, is that there is, calling it stress is probably an understatement. There is a blanket of fear that's out there. So anytime that you can work with somebody to help bring that level of fear down, you're making a major contribution, not just to that person's individual life, but to the broader society, because you're helping to bring the fear level down. So first of all, thanks for doing the work. And second of all, tell us about the experience.
Yes. So I do brief solution-oriented webinars. So I kind of take it more into a directive coaching mode.
Mm-hmm.
So I give a little bit of psychoeducation, just break down the concept or, the physiology of stress and anxiety, what's going on, what causes it. And then I get to some very simple solutions. And I do it in about 30, 35 minutes or so. So one of my solutions I offer is what I call pushing the pause button. And it's basically, it requires a certain level of awareness from the individual. But when you're feeling overwhelmed or, you're getting stressed, you can kind of feel it. So I teach people to become aware of themselves and just to notice when they're feeling stressed and overwhelmed. And when they are, just hit the pause button and make a shift in their awareness. You pause, and then you make an intentional shift. And in your shift, what I recommend is that one of the simplest things to do, if you're able to, and if you have the time, is give yourself 30 minutes of laughter every day, but particularly when you're feeling overwhelmed. So we all have smartphones.
Mm-hmm.
So I tell everybody to download Pandora on their smartphones and load all of their favorite comedians.
Mm-hmm.
And for at least 30 minutes, give themselves the gift of laughter. That becomes an intentional shift. Now you've allayed the feelings, the physiology of the stress and the anxiety. and you're in a whole nother vibration now. So that's one of the first things I do. I also give them this notion of kind of offsetting, but dealing with the anxiety. So I say, you know, pick a date and time and write down that date and time. And that'll be the date and time that you actually address all of your anxieties. But for now, be present. Now, when you go to that date and time, describe, you know, get into the feeling of whatever it is, write a plan for it, and go about that plan. And give yourself no more than an hour of indulging those feelings and coming up with that plan. And then be done with it. So this is something that you commit to yourself with. So you allay those feelings of anxiety and, you know, that overwhelm by actually saying, okay, right now I'm not going to deal with it, but when I choose to deal with it, I'm going to give myself the time and space, get an understanding of what I need to do, and do it. And this deals with managing the things that we have control over. It's very important, because when you become anxious, you're really kind of, in certain moments, you're losing the control of what you can manage, because now you're letting extraneous things kind of control how you feel and think. And I don't want to oversimplify it. So in my webinar, I'll say, you know, if you've been clinically diagnosed with any of the anxiety disorders, this isn't necessarily for you, because you have a treatment protocol. And so you're doing something that's going to be stretched over a period of time. But for those who are on the webinar who aren't diagnosed with any of the anxiety disorders, these are things that they can do to help kind of push off that continual repetitious feeling of stress, that anxiety. I also tell them to really cut or decrease the amount of time they spend in front of negative news venues or negative, you know, what was that? The Wizard of Oz, no bad news?
The Wiz.
The Wiz. Yeah.
Yep.
So
that's my favorite jam.
A lot of bad news, you know.
Yep.
Don't, because there is so much bad news out there. We can literally diet on bad news and make ourselves sick.
Okay.
So limit that bad news. And then the last part, I take them through a progressive relaxation exercise and teach them how to anchor themselves in that, so that when they go back and do it, the more they do this, the more natural and second nature it becomes to them.
Wow.
That's very good. Now, Alex, I hadn't asked you. Daniel told us his story, and I mentioned that I'd also been through it. Have you ever been hypnotized? Have you had any experiences with any of this kind of thing? And I asked in part because I know you also have a history with anxiety. So I'm kind of thinking, okay, how do these all tie together for you?
Well, I wasn't actually hypnotized, but I did witness stage hypnotism. So it was senior year, and we had senior freak week, and one of the guests was a hypnotist. So I watched a lot of my friends get embarrassed on stage. That was fun. But also I was taught, I was talking to Rasheid earlier about how one of my doctors recently told me that I need to see a hypnotist because he thinks my cyclic vomiting disorder is in my head. Yeah.
Okay.
So I wonder how that works with a previous diagnosis of anxiety and, you know, all that stuff.
Coach, how about it?
So if there's a clinical diagnosis for it, I'm not totally, I would have to do some research on cyclical vomiting syndrome. But if that's an anxiety oriented phenomena.
It's not.
It's not? Okay. So I would have to do some research to see kind of, you know, how that works or what's going on with it, or I would have to spend some time, you know, with Alex and kind of get to understand what happens when she's going through that. But just off the cuff, I would, and just out of pure ignorance, but nothing other than what she said so far, I could say that even not knowing everything, I would probably do something perhaps either start with some tapping to see if she gets any relief from tapping, and then move into sort of some type of regression therapy to see if perhaps this is maybe connected to something else. Not past life regression, but just age regression.
Oh, I love past life regression.
Well, you can slip that in afterward. That's okay.
It's like, no, let's just keep going back.
Not far enough.
I'm only in 1920. Let's keep going.
Danger, Will Robinson.
We got a couple of questions from Josephine, who's in the live stream audience. She's first of all asking, what are your thoughts on 528 hertz music? Do you have any experience with any of that?
528. Let me not speak out of ignorance. But I will say that I'm familiar with the different. I know something about it, but it's not top of mind for me right now.
Okay.
But I do think 528 hertz music is good, because I think that is where the what are those binaural type? I think that's where the binaural beats and stuff. That's kind of where they're seated in. And so
I'm sorry, I'm gonna devil's advocate here for a second. What is this? What are we talking about? For those of us who don't know, what is 520 hertz? 528 hertz.
Yeah, I don't want to speak out of ignorance because I'm going to embarrass myself.
Okay.
But the best I could say is that I do know that there are certain frequencies of music or sounds that resonate on a more, I don't want to say therapeutic, but a more positive and useful resonance.
Oh, okay. Okay.
It's like thinking of, like Dr. Hiroshi, what's his name? The guy who did the thing with the water.
Emoto.
Yeah, so it's like thinking good thoughts versus thinking bad thoughts. So the 528s is on the positive type of vibration thing. So with the binaural beats, they help slow down and relax your mind and put you in a better and more conducive brainwave frequency, excuse me.
Okay. And she also
really cool stuff.
In reference to your statement earlier about the importance of laughter, and by the way, I'm totally on board with that. I love that idea. I do it myself.
Cosign.
She's asking, have you done any studies on laughter and immunity?
I've not done studies, but I've read studies about laughter and how laughter affects the immune system. It kind of kicks in endorphins and things that help boost the immune system. So scientifically, yes, laughter has been shown to bolster the immune system.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. My sister-in-law, Ioana, does the Monday show with us, and she's always on top of the science of this kind of thing. And that's one thing that she has jumped in on a lot in the past. She used to be a co-host of mine like 6-7 years ago, and we talked a lot about the various ways that the immune system is supported, comedy being like right near the top, just because interesting thing about that. And maybe you know something more along this line that you can comment on, but there's a difference between finding something funny and actually laughing at it in the way that the brain reacts and responds to it. When you just find it funny, yes, the brain notices it, but when you laugh at it, it actually kicks a whole bunch of processes into gear that really not just get the endorphins going, but it starts doing healing of various cells and so forth. I mean, it's a major difference between just laughing and just finding it funny, which I found to be interesting.
I don't know, like scholastically how that works, but I can say that finding something funny is kind of like probably a left brain type of thing, whereas laughter is a bicameral, both hemispheric type of experience. It's a holistic experience.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So, okay.
There's also the automatic response as well when you think about it.
What do you mean?
You may have pre-canned responses to things. So at an unconscious level, you may be predisposed to laughing at something, but you might not necessarily have the chemical response of the humor in your body. You have the auto response of, but internally your body's still like, Nah, mate. So the actual physiological benefits of the laughter don't end up actually translating into the effect.
Well, that's why you got to be honest.
Even
with
look at people that laugh at people being bullied. They're not really enjoying it, but the social dynamic of everybody else laughing induces the automatic response of laughter, almost in a trance-like way. But there's no actual physiological response, so you don't get the benefit.
Yeah, the herd mentality.
Yeah,
herd. That's the one.
Probably need to. That. You make a very good point there too. So yeah.
All right, good stuff. I'm wondering if Daniel, as you were hearing what Coach was talking about in terms of his book and the 7 concepts that he puts forward, I was hearing overlap.
I was laughing. I was smiling.
Well, I was hearing overlap to what you talk about in your book. I mean, there's a lot of overlap there. It's really interesting.
Yeah, the micro shifting in there, having the pause, and creating the conducive space to create in. So I'm looking forward to checking out the book myself.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah,
especially since that you said that you're pursuing your certificate, your first level certificate in hypnotherapy or hypnosis. I'm not sure which one it was, but just the parallel path here is fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, so because obviously I do the guided visualizations that I create in my work now. I mean, the challenge that I've been doing this week, it's been really, really heavily weighted on the visualization stuff, and I just noticed there was a very noticeable difference in the effect of the visualization when I started to introduce some of the hypnosis techniques. So the induction, tying up the conscious mind and understanding that the unconscious doesn't listen to words, it listens to the emotional imprints. And I just found that so I've not studied it so that I can become a hypnotherapist. It's so that I can apply the principles into my everyday work.
Which is cool. By the way, for listeners who haven't checked out any of Dan's stuff yet, I actually sat in on one of Dan's sessions this week for part of the session, and it was good stuff. I mean, you led everybody through a meditation, and even though I couldn't allow myself to relax totally because I was doing some other stuff, I did find that my concentration was kind of moving away. So you're very good at it. Just wanted to let you know.
Rasheid, darn you for making me concentrate on what you're talking about. Darn you to
Damn it, I focused.
Rasheid, do you do similar stuff? Do you offer, you mentioned the webinar, but I'm not sure, are you doing stuff online with people on Facebook or something?
Yeah, I am.
Tell us about that.
So I do remote sessions online. Basically all the stuff that I do in my coaching practice, I'm able to do it remotely as well. So, depending on what people are coming to see me for. I guide them through the inductions and, induced trance states and so forth. I just require that if we're doing it remotely, they have to have some type of hands-free capability.
Oh, okay. Because that was my next question.
The relaxation is important. Now, for those who aren't able to be guided through a progressive relaxation, I'm not able to do it remotely because now we need to do, well, actually, let me not say that. There's always the element induction, which works with everyone. Doesn't get me to depth a lot of times with people who are what I call hyper-rational, people who are just thinkers, like they can't relax the thinking. It gets me enough, but I like getting into that deep somnambulism. Like I like people to feel that they've gotten a certain level of depth because there's some side effects to that state. So oftentimes people will come out of hypnosis when they're doing it with me, having felt like their bodies have gotten the rest and relaxation that they've needed, for years. So oftentimes people come out saying, wow, I feel like I can go run a marathon, or my body feels completely rejuvenated and relaxed, and I'm in a totally different space, So I like to, push the depth for that reason. Like I want people to have a memorable experience. Like, yeah, that's the wow factor for me.
Very cool. I also have to ask you something else too. And it's something that can be a little bit controversial because different therapists will have different takes on it. What's your take on auto hypnotism, like basically hypnotizing yourself in order to try to, make changes and so forth. Is that something that you think is a good idea? Should you only be doing it with somebody else who's a qualified therapist? I mean, what's your take on it?
Well, I don't have a problem with it. In fact, whether you consider it hypnosis or not, but auto hypnosis, I recommend that anyone do it because it can be effective. Now, it's not the same as hetero hypnosis, meaning someone hypnotizing you. Mm-hmm. So auto hypnosis is just going to work by sheer repetition. Like, you continually listen to whatever it is, or you continually repeat whatever the exercise is. It's not going to work the same as hypnosis, because in hypnosis, you're bypassing the conscious mind. So you can't really hypnotize yourself, because you got to be conscious to lead yourself through the exercises. Mm-hmm. So you're indulging the conscious mind. So that's what I'm saying. Auto hypnosis is just going to work from sheer repetition. It's going to work because they say repetition is the first law of learning. So mm-hmm. you'll eventually pick it up the more you repeat it.
Okay, that makes sense.
Does it work like hypnosis, hetero hypnosis? No, it doesn't.
So talk then a little bit about what are the similarities and differences between what you're calling hetero hypnosis and meditation, because meditation is also about getting past the conscious mind, getting into that state, but doing it through your own method rather than being led through it. Although today more and more people are enjoying guided meditation. So there's kind of an overlap there.
So for me, one of the main things about meditation is just connecting with the gaps in between thoughts. And you can do that just, from relaxing and meditating. Hypnosis and hypnotherapy is intentional and kind of solution oriented. And so, outside of being able to relax, your relaxation is what allows you to be in that state or in that space. Once you begin thinking, trying to work on the solution or the fixing part, oftentimes that leads you out of that peaceful, conducive state. So again, meditation for me, when I'm doing it myself and I'm not being led, it's about connecting. And that's how I do my meditation. Just connecting with those gaps of no thought.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I had a question and it's gone. I mean, it was right there. It was right there and it's gone.
Was it on the tip of your tongue?
It was on the tip of my tongue, yes.
I see it there, just heading towards your galaxy.
Galaxy.
Call it back. Call it back.
It's over here. It's over here. I can't remember what it was. So
the tip is, I remember the question I was going to ask.
Okay.
No, you're going to say
it.
Oh, I remember the question I was going to ask. It was...
It's coming to me now. It's coming to me now.
It's coming to me.
And think about something completely different.
Yeah, well, that's just
and then stop trying to remember it.
Once I distract, and I've been asking all the questions. You come, Daniel, you're good at this. Ask a good question here. Give Rasheid something good to talk about.
I'm enjoying just learning. This is really quite. I feel like I'm almost an observer that's still getting paid.
Yeah. Yep.
Like those football players that get to sit on the bench every week and get paid.
The backup,
except I'm not complaining about it. No, but in all seriousness, though, what are your thoughts on the idea that we have the conscious, the unconscious, and then deeper levels of consciousness? What are your thoughts on the idea that the philosophical discussion about whether or not those higher levels of consciousness are necessarily tied to the physical mind versus being a more ethereal level of consciousness?
Well, I need to have a think on that one.
Daniel asks very deep questions.
Yeah, he does.
It's kind
These have breadth and depth,
I don't really know how to address that other than to say that I would not. So I would be kind of on the fence in terms of I couldn't take it off the table. I couldn't, throw it away. I have a belief that everything is energy, regardless of how we kind of compartmentalize or sectionalize or cart things off. I think everything is energy. And so in this big cosmic soup of energy, we just tend to use certain things to connect with certain energetic frequencies. Like a raw example would be, when I do some of my workshops, I ask people, what do you see with? See with your eyes, or what do you hear with? You hear with your ears. And I say, absolutely wrong. You do all that with your brain, but those are the instruments that help, interpret the signal or the frequency, the energy, and send it to your brain so it can, understand what it is. And so perhaps these energies or these levels of consciousness may not be mind oriented, but now my concept of the mind is that the mind is not necessarily in the head. So for me, the mind is and here I go. But
that's all right. We've been working to get you in this direction. You finally got there. That's good.
Join the light side.
We have cookies.
But yeah, for me, the mind is a morphogenetic field of energy. And
Love it.
The mind is what keeps everything in the you-ness, for lack of a better term. It keeps everything that makes you connected. And so that energy field is the encapsulating field of all the information, all the energy and information that makes you. And so perhaps the mental part of it, or the thinking, processing brain part of it, may not necessarily be a part of it, but the field of energy that makes you, your mind, extends outside of your head, outside of your brain. So
I love it. No, because it's just, when you mentioned about meditation, I found it really interesting that you went to the thought piece, because I mean, when I did the first part of my degree that I never finished, philosophy was one of the things that we looked at. Philosophy is one of the things I studied, and one of the things we looked at is this idea of where is the mind. It's really interesting, because before that time, I'd never thought about where is the mind, because most people just immediately correlate the mind and the brain.
Right.
When you start to look at the mind and thought, it's not something that we engage with our senses. And so when we start making that compartmentalization of energy, which happens at different densities,
right?
Like you said, everything is energy, even what we interpret as being physical matter. It's just energy that's so densely compressed that we're able to engage with it and meet it head on, versus me putting my hand through the air, because this is an empty space. There's lots of stuff happening here,
right.
But the shift in density means that I can engage with it differently. But when we look at meditation, there are those different schools of thought, those that go to the thought and find the space between the thought, and those that use it as an opportunity to move beyond the mind, or beyond that mental morphological field. Is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Morphogenetic field, to move beyond that and to connect to something above that. I mean, for me personally, I see mind, and I love the way you described it, is how we almost have our sense of identity almost in that space of polarity. For me, mind is, once we drop from and start to get less and more dense and move into a space of polarity that is commonly discussed as happening at the speed of light, once we drop into polarity and have that separation, our individual expression within that separation happens in that field that we call mind. And meditation can be moving above it, or it could be just having a better grasp on your movement within that field also. So I find it interesting. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on it after you speaking about Walt's question on meditation.
Yeah, and again, I'm speaking from my limited experience with meditation, albeit effective for me.
And that's what matters, really.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I've learned meditation.
Mm-hmm.
I've not taken my meditation. So, I did different courses in meditation. We have Vipassana meditation when I was in school, and we got other different types. I've not experienced, your TMs or different other types. So, it's really been my own personal experiences, because for lack of having certain trainings, I just find the truth of what, where I am in my personal consciousness. And for me, I seem to derive the most benefit when I'm able to expand that area or that gap space between thought, where there is no thought, because I guess in my mind, I'm processing it as accessing some of that, like you said, 90% of what we have is empty space, or for lack of a better term, what we're calling empty space. And so in my mind, that's what I'm doing when I connect with those gaps of thought. I'm connecting with the empty space, and I'm hoping that I am transcending thought and getting into higher realms of consciousness.
Love it. One of my earlier teachers, I'm going back 20 years, he said that meditation is almost finding the space between the tick and the tock.
Yeah. Like that. Absolutely.
I like that.
And he
too.
He said essentially we're finding the firsts that we miss when we fall into the illusion of time and look at the seconds. The meditation is the space of the firsts, and then we can bounce between the polarity of the first and the seconds and have wholeness, and through that space of wholeness, more power over our ability to create our world. So that's one of the things that I learned. So
yeah,
I do definitely get where you're coming from, of finding more wholeness by connecting to those pieces that we get lost in, almost in that trance, that low level trance of being in thought, stepping beyond that trance, and almost that's where we could say the observer effect comes in, being the witness that Eckhart Tolle talks about in The Power of Now. That oneness, or that reconnection to the truth of oneness, can happen outside of that space of trance. And you found your way of connecting with it by finding the gap in between thought. Some people have it in going fishing. Some people have it in dancing. Some people have it in riding their bicycle. Some people have it on having a glass of whiskey at the end of the day. Whatever way you find it is finding that space of trance, of conscious trance, that pulls you out of the unconscious trance and allows you to connect to more of yourself.
Right. Yeah.
That's very good. I like that. I did finally remember the question. And so now I know what the solution is. The solution, whenever I forget the question, I just ask Daniel to ask questions, and then it comes to me. So
But seriously, what I was trying to get you to do before is demonstrate it to work. I remember what I was going to say. It's coming to me now. So you set the intention and then distract yourself. So you've set the intention, and then the distraction, you allow the thought to come to the front of mind, because the neural pathways get blocked by you trying to remember it. When you think about something completely different, it opens up the neural pathway, and then the thing on the tip of the tongue comes to the front of the tongue.
Oh, I agree. I just did it by having Daniel ask a question, but it's
either way, we got here. That's the point.
But anyway, the question I had in mind was, you were talking earlier about at my request, you're talking about the similarities and differences between being hypnotized by like the hetero hypnotist type situation and self-hypnosis or auto-hypnosis. And as you were describing the differences, it occurred to me, it really is important that the person who's hypnotizing you is somebody you trust. Because if you have any kind of distrust, or if it doesn't feel comfortable, it's not going to work out real well. You're going to get the reaction like Daniel had when he's up on stage and he's going, what? And you're not going to get the work done that you want to get done. So I guess the question is, how do you pick the right coach? Do you just try different coaches? And I'll do one session with you, one session with you. Do you do it just based on an interview and see if you're comfortable? What's the best way to pick a hypnotherapist?
Well, it becomes a relationship. So you would kind of reach out to someone and find out, first of all, if they are competent to do the work, and, ask questions, get a feel for how you and that person relate to one another. That's very important. However, the lion's share of the work is going to be on the therapist, the hypnotist.
Right.
because the hypnotist understands that, wow, is that a mosquito? Excuse me. The hypnotist understands that there is going to be a certain amount of resistance if rapport isn't gained. And so that's one of the main things the hypnotist is working at, is gaining rapport. So certain things you do, like what I call psychoeducation in therapy, is what, hypnotists call the pre-talk, where they kind of explain what hypnosis is and how it works ahead of time. So you give that information and then you discuss it. You help the individual understand what's, kind of what to expect during the session. One of the things I like to tell people is that the initial session, I like to do an initial session where I do the setup work, where I condition my clients so that once I've conditioned them, I give them a post-hypnotic suggestion for reinduction. And so once they've done all of that, I've got the setup, I understand how they think, feel, and act when they're in session. We kind of work out the kinks. Then the next session is going to be easier to move through because now we have rapport. Now they've had an experience of what it's like, and they're vested, okay. They understand that they have a part in this. So it's not just me doing work, it's them being vested into the process and wanting to get the gains or the return that they're asking for. And they've been made to understand that it's not just on me, but it's more so on them.
That's important to have that rapport for sure, because without that rapport, you're not going to get very far. I mean, I imagine you, like anybody, you run into situations where you're trying to work with somebody and you're really doing your best and they're doing their best, but for whatever intangible reason, it's just not connecting. And you got to be willing to recognize, just sometimes a combination doesn't work for reasons passing understanding.
Yeah.
Well, that's with any therapist.
Yeah.
It's got to be a right fit for your situation.
Right. So you have to be willing to admit and acknowledge that, okay, so it didn't work out in this case. Doesn't mean I shouldn't go find somebody else. Doesn't mean I shouldn't try again.
Right.
Because that's the thought that goes through my mind. I wonder how often does somebody give up when it doesn't work out the first time?
I don't. Typically, I meet on grounds where we have enough to work from. So everything is going to be picture perfect, but typically you have enough to work from. And that's kind of where we go. And again, hypnosis and therapy are, because of my mindset and how I view or how I'm oriented, I see the possibility of reformation or change in any and everyone. So I'm coming from that space of empathy and hope and unconditional positive regard when I work with people.
So it sounds like a postcard way of saying you get it right every time. That's pretty good. I mean, having a track record like that's great.
Well, no.
So hold on there. Hold on.
Very arrogant. No. I don't get it right every time, but I work towards getting it right. So when I'm saying I have enough to work from, it's enough. I can make it work.
Okay, that's fair.
I was wanting to loop back to what Rasheid was saying earlier about the fact that, the therapist is doing heavy lifting, but there has to be some involvement from the client.
You got to have a buy-in.
I suppose where this comes from is in my own coaching work, I've refunded people and said, I'm not, this isn't going to work. Not because the work wasn't going to be able to work, but they were more committed on some level, whether they're ready to admit it or not, or whether they're even conscious of it or not, to remaining the same than actually to making the change. There wasn't sufficient leverage. So at an unconscious level, there was going to be a level of sabotage that was going to inhibit that change happening. And so even when you're referring to people, it not quite working and then going to try someone else, at an unconscious level, that could be holding to the pattern of staying the same, masked with, it didn't work with this person, so I'm going to try someone else. It didn't work with this person, I'm going to try with someone else. Almost like relationships, right? I was reading someone, it made me laugh, the idea that if the advice was, if the person that you start dating with says, you're not like other people, run. Because what's probably happened is they've got a view of everybody that right now you're not matching, but they're going to find it. They're going to find it because wherever you go, there you are. And if you're showing up in this situation saying, yeah, it's not going to work with you for A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And obviously there's discernment. Sometimes it doesn't work. There is a lack of rapport. There's some people that you just don't get along with, or there's some people whose language doesn't necessarily fit you. I laugh about this all the time. My other half, Olga, doesn't necessarily do my stuff. Why? It's not really her language, but she does have people whose language she does work with that does jive with her. And so she does work on them. And so there's almost like this fine line between taking a break from working with this person because it's not for you versus recognizing that maybe it's you that's not ready to actually do the work and maybe taking care of doing that first.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I refer to that as secondary gain. Being there's more commitment to whatever it is that's got you stuck in that condition than there is to actually fixing it, because you're getting something out of that. And a good example is a loved one that I have who wanted me to do some phobia work. It never happened. They never took the first step, which was to call me and say, let's set up a time. And I've said it repeatedly. So, and I understand, because, we can be in mixed company and they can always talk about this phobia and how overwhelming it is. And, it's like they've enveloped themselves in the need to keep this narrative going. So, yeah. But when we get to the point, people, when I'm saying that I typically have enough to work with, when we get to the point where they have given me the okay, and I'm going to ask, do you consent to being hypnotized? They have to sign off on the paperwork and so forth, saying that they want to do the therapy and so forth. And once we move into that space, that's part of the commitment that they're showing, and we I have some of the verbiage in my pre-talk that speaks to making sure that they're committed, that, there's no overt awareness of secondary gain or something that's going to work against the work and so forth. So we try to hit that off in the front end so that we don't get in the space where we're working and now I'm discovering, okay, you're working against yourself. So I do my best to kind of allay all of that stuff and push it off. So I address it up front as best I can, and then we move into it. But yeah, absolutely. There are people who are committed to proving you wrong, proving themselves wrong.
Oh, sure.
They will go from person to person to prove it. And there's nothing you can do about it, because that's their story and that's what they want.
That's my story and I'm sticking to it. All right, calm down. I'm here. I'm happy being unhappy. And all your therapy and all of your hypnosis majigamy ain't doing nothing. All right.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yep. Common enough story. Hey, we're running out of time, but before we completely run out here, I want to give you a chance to tell people how to reach out to you, Coach. I mean, clearly you've got a service here that there are going to be people who are going to want to reach out for. How do they do it? How do they find you?
The best way to reach out to me is going to be at mentalinfinity.com. I have a contact page on that website. If you are interested in doing the stress and anxiety webinar, you can reach out to me on that contact page and put that in. I also have private sessions and so forth. All of that can be done by contacting me on my contact page on that website at mentalinfinity.com.
All right, very good. Well, this has been good. It's been fun. We've had some laughs. We've got some good information.
I love the levity.
Yeah. Well, we try to keep it light. I mean, our subtitle here is your daily dose of happy. If we're not giving a daily dose of happy, we're not doing our jobs. So,
yeah, I enjoyed this.
That's just part of it. So, no, we appreciate it. We love the fact that you took the time and gave us some good tips and insights and gave us an idea of who Rasheid Edwards is. That's a good part too.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to checking out the book as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
The book, I presume, is on Amazon. I guess that's always the go-to place to find it, right?
Yep.
So good stuff. All right.
I'm gonna look for it.
Daniel and Alex, thanks again. We appreciate all your contributions as well. Thank you also to our live streamers. And especially we thank all of our podcast listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Watch you guys rock out.